evening, everyone. My lord, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to the launch of the TVE 12th Global Sustainability Film Awards event. Now, I think most of you have heard about the work of TVE. For those who have not yet heard much about TVE, let me share with you that Television for the Environment was founded 39 years ago by the United Nations, the World Wildlife Fund, and Central Television to use the power of storytelling through films to highlight environmental and sustainability issues, and in cases, some possible solutions. So this evening, we will be launching our 2023 awards. This is the 12th year. We are expecting over 100 film entries from around the world, and we have had some pretty good successes over the years. For instance, in 2020, the winner of our Founders Award, My Octopus Teacher, went on to win the BAFTA and subsequently the Hollywood Oscar for Best Documentary. So the message is the standard of the entries of the films entered are very high indeed, and you will hear more about the awards and also about the categories from my fellow trustees and colleagues. This evening we have the pleasure, and we are indeed very honored to have with us a world-renowned individual who is the United Nations patron of the oceans and a really famous, truly amazing endurance swimmer. So you'll hear from him later. We are still expecting some more attendees, but in the interest of time, we decide that we're going to crack on with it. So at this stage, I would like to introduce the lady whose brainchild it is to think of having the TVE Global Sustainability Film Awards. So she's the president of Television for the Environment, Surina Narula, MBE.
Lords, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to you all. I want to begin by expressing my heartfelt thanks to Mason. Thank you for your kind words and always encouraging us, and I appreciate your support. And thank you all of you for gathering with us today as we celebrate the power of storytelling and its potential to shape the future of our world. When we first conceived the Global Sustainable Film Awards, it was for a dual purpose. I was invited by TVE to help fundraise, and I came to a board meeting. I think Richard is here. He was then there, and we talked about how we could raise money and also talk about sustainability. And that's how initially the awards were created. So we wanted to create a platform that would amplify the global discourse on sustainability. Today we live in an era where our actions will determine the world our children and grandchildren will inherit. It's crucial that we understand the Sustainable Development Goals set forth by the United Nations. And what better way to communicate these complex issues than through the universally understood language of film? So we just don't talk about environment in these films. We are also talking about the other Millennium Development Goals. We talk about women and children, poverty, and other issues. Every year we choose a jury from different parts of the world, as well as some of them are businessmen, some of them are filmmakers, some of them work in the sustainable space. So the jury is composed of all those people who look at those 100 films and select the best ones. So these awards were created for, the second purpose was to raise money. So every penny raised here tonight goes towards the work of TVE. So by recognizing and rewarding the best films on sustainability, we aim to promote a culture of responsibility and action. So now there is more going to come after this. Some of my colleagues are going to talk in detail about the categories of the films which are awarded every year. We've also started giving an award to a full-length feature film. And we usually every year go to Cannes Film Festival and launch every year over there also these awards. This year it's going to be on the 20th of May. We are going to host a small lunch where we've invited a lot of filmmakers and film producers there. And if any of you happen to be there, let me know. Please join us. Now it's my distinct privilege to introduce a man who embodies these principles and who has been instrumental in the success of the Global Sustainability Film Awards every year, Mr. Dinesh Thameja. In fact, for the last 3 years, you've been with us. Dinesh Thameja is a serial entrepreneur. He was the first South Asian immigrant to start a business in the UK, ebookers.com, and take it to the FTSE 250 on the London Stock Exchange. His new business is in the solar energy and green hydrogen sector. He has set up and worked for many charities in the last 18 years. Along the way, he became an MEP in Brussels, a fellow of Fitzwilliam College, Cambridge, and wrote a book, Book It, about his entrepreneurial journey. Dinesh, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for joining us today for the launch of the 12th GSFA Awards. I am co-president of the awards, which recognize outstanding films from the business, non-profit, media, and creative sectors that inspire audiences for a more sustainable future. I stand before you with immense pride and gratitude as our collective efforts have brought us together to create a better world for future generations. The awards believe in the power of storytelling, as Serena just said, working with business, governments, filmmakers and individuals to promote sustainable practices and drive positive change. Together, we advocate for environmentally friendly initiatives, social equity, and responsible governance that not only benefits our immediate communities, but has far-reaching impact globally. This year, we've included a new category in the GSFA, which is also very close to my heart, ESG for Business. The aim is to showcase the amazing work of those businesses which have integrated sustainability into their core strategies and operations. We aim to foster a mindset where environmental stewardship, social responsibility, and ethical governance become integral parts of the DNA of every organization. Today I call upon each and every one of you to come forward and support the TVE Global Sustainability Film Awards on this transformative journey. Whether you're a business leader, a government official, an individual, or a member of another charitable organization, your contributions are vital. Spread the word and support the awards by getting more film entries, promoting the awards on social media, becoming a sponsor, or buying a table for the awards ceremony dinner to be held in early November. Thank you once again for your unwavering support. I look forward to seeing you all in November for the TVE GSFA ceremony. Now I would like to launch the category teasers for the 12th TVE Global Sustainability Film Awards. May I request the team to play the video, please? Thank you.
And now, for the second half of the program that we've all been waiting for, and this is a keynote address and presentation by Lewis Pugh, who is a world-famous endurance swimmer, and also the United Nations patron of the oceans. And we're going to sort of run this session with Lewis and with Nick. And now, for the second half of the program that we've all been waiting for, And this is a keynote address and presentation by Lewis Pugh, who is a world-famous endurance swimmer, and also the United Nations patron of the oceans. And we're going to sort of run this session with Lewis and with Nick Nuttall. So Nick is a trustee of TVE, and he's also been the chairman of the jury of GSFA for many years. And what is interesting is that Nick worked for the United Nations Environment Program many years ago. He was a spokesman in Paris years ago, but he actually was the one that appointed Lewis Pugh to be the United Nations Patron of the Oceans 10 years ago. So they're going to meet and they're going to have conversation later, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions. So Nick continues to do brilliant work on the environment, and he's a broadcaster, and he's doing a lot of work for the Swedish platform We Don't Have Time. And in fact, tonight's proceeding is going to be streamed to a lot of people. Nick will sort of say how many tomorrow. So all jolly good for TVE, because we are raising the profile of the work and raising the profile of GSFA. And now it's my pleasure to hand over to Nick.
Well,
How many people, Nick?
well, Mason, thanks very much indeed. We're just waiting for a slight technical thing with the section with Lewis, so I thought I'd come and join you here because, yeah, if you were a bit bored one evening or you haven't got anything better to do, then tune into We Don't Have Time. It's based in Stockholm. It's been going for about 5 or 6 years now, and for our big shows, like when we're broadcasting from the UN climate conferences, like Sharm el-Sheikh just recently, we get about 10 million viewers per day in about 150 countries. It's a whole new frontier, in a sense, for climate and environmental broadcasting. It's like a chat show, but with lots of artists as well as professional people. And now, I think we're ready, aren't we? It's that moment. Mason, can you say, it is that moment?
It's that moment.
It's that moment. Lewis Pugh is in our midst. Come on down, Lewis.
Come on.
Okay. Right. It's quite dark up here, isn't it? Maybe we'll go that first. Let's see that first, shall we?
As I look around the world and all the world's oceans, I'm seeing the results of great big industrial fishing fleets hoovering up the ocean, and I'm also seeing the impact of climate change. We really have to take these biodiversity hotspots, these last wilderness areas on this earth, and we need to fully protect them. And the reason why I'm doing these swims is to really highlight how important it is to try and protect this place.
So let me do the honours there, and let me introduce our guest of this evening, Lewis Pugh. Lewis is, as mentioned, an endurance swimmer. He is also the United Nations Patron of the Ocean. He pioneers swims in the most vulnerable ecosystems on Earth to call for their protection against humanity's surging levels of damage from plastics and chemical pollution to overfishing and, of course, climate change. Lewis is in many ways unique. He was the first person to complete a long-distance swim in every ocean of the world. He was also the first to swim across the icy waters of the North Pole in temperatures where most of us would have swiftly perished. Lewis was also the first to swim the length of the English Channel, the length from Land's End to Dover, and that's 528 kilometres. I have a bit which Sim talked about in a bit part in Lewis's story. In 2013, the then head of the UN Environment Programme, Achim Steiner, conferred on Lewis the title of Patron of the Oceans. So it's his 10th anniversary, yeah? And it was based on a recommendation from me, but Achim actually did it. What struck me then, and I just wanted to say this, Lewis, and still strikes me today, that in a world of sometimes cheap celebrity and social media egos, Lewis does not do what he does for self-aggrandizement, to be a celebrity or to get rich. Instead, every inch of this man and every muscle that twitches and heaves on the swims does so because he is truly passionate about the state of our seas and oceans, and he is committed to doing something about it. Indeed, Lewis has already been instrumental in protecting over 2 billion square kilometres of vulnerable ocean. His dream is to protect at least 30% of the world's oceans, and that does not factor in the enormous attention he generates on these absolutely critical issues, inspiring others, young and old, powerful, and perhaps initially feeling powerless, to act. We in London are very lucky to have you here, Lewis, and the hundreds of thousands of people that will watch the stream of this show tomorrow on We Don't Have Time, they are lucky too, and I hope they're inspired by your words. Over to you, Lewis.
Thank you very, very much. It's really wonderful to be here this evening. What I want to do this evening is I want to tell you, so I've been swimming now for 35 years. And over a period of 35 years, you really do see the oceans change. And I could tell you stories about many different swims, but I want to tell you the story about swimming across the North Pole. So just to put this water temperature into perspective, a normal indoor swimming pool is around about 27 degrees centigrade. If you drop down to 18, that's the temperature of the water when you swim across the English Channel in summer. Drop all the way down to just 5. That's the temperature of the water in which the passengers of the Titanic perished. Fresh water freezes at 0. The water of the North Pole is even colder, it's minus 1.7 degrees centigrade. I remember arriving at the North Pole and looking out over this icy terrain and thinking to myself, actually I've never seen anything which just looks so terrifying. I went and had dinner with my team. There wasn't much talking at dinner. We finished our dinner. I then went back to my cabin. I closed the door. I closed the curtains over the porthole. I lay down on my bunk. I closed my eyes and I tried to sleep. And I remember 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, midnight, 1, 2, 3, 4. The Inuit people, so the indigenous people who live up in the high Arctic, in the Canadian high Arctic, they say that in every single person there's an almighty battle taking place, and there's a battle in the mind, and they say it's a battle between 2 wolves, a good wolf and a bad wolf. And which wolf wins in this epic battle? Well, the Inuit people say that it's a wolf which you feed. And I realized that for the whole night, all I had been thinking about was absolutely everything which could go wrong during this swim. And I had just been feeding this bad wolf. And no matter how much I tried to get this thought out of my mind, it was impossible. Eventually at 5 o'clock, I fell asleep. And then predictably at 6 o'clock, there's a knock on the cabin door, and it's my coach, David Becker. He says, "Morning, Lewis, how are you feeling?" I said, "David, this swim is impossible. I've been thinking about it overnight. This swim is impossible." He said, No, Lewis. We all believe that you can do this swim. I said to him, with all due respect, David, there's only one of us getting in the water today, and that's me. He said, No, Lewis. He said, really, we all believe that you can do this swim. He said, what I'm going to do is, he said, I want to give you 2 anchors. And I need you to hold on to these 2 anchors. And whenever you doubt yourself, whenever you think, this swim is impossible, he said, I need you to remember these 2 anchors. And so he said, the first thing I'm going to do is I want you to walk all the way back to the beginning of your life. I want you to turn around and I want you to walk back to today. And I want you to remember all those moments which have molded you into the person you are. He said, go back to the beginning. Now, I was very, very lucky. When I was 10 years old, I initially grew up in Plymouth, down in the southwest, but when I was 10, we moved out to South Africa. And my parents loved to take me to national parks. David said to me, he said, Lewis, just remember those with as much detail as possible. Your love for the environment, it didn't grow up in a vacuum. And then he said, and remember your first big swim, which was across the English Channel. Now, I thought that the swim was going to take me round about 10 hours to complete. At 9.5 hours, the coach came to the edge of the boat and he said, Lewis, you better swim hard now or you're going to get swept down the coast. And I swam and I swam and I swam. Eventually, after 15 hours, I finally put my feet down on that French sand. He said, just remember that. That gave you a little bit of grit, a little bit of determination, which isn't a bad thing. And then he said, and remember studying as a law student at the University of Cape Town in the early 1990s at the end of apartheid, when some of your lecturers were imprisoned and some of your fellow students were imprisoned fighting for justice and fighting for equality. He said to me, every single generation will have its issues. The defining issue of our generation, though, will be the health of our planet. And he said, and if you still doubt yourself, I want you to do the complete opposite. I want you to walk all the way to the end of your life. I want you to turn around and ask yourself why you are here today. And he said to me, he said, you have this one opportunity now to share this message about what's happening up here in the Arctic. I'd spent the past 7 summers going up to the Arctic, and every single year I'd seen the sea ice getting thinner and thinner and less. And I'd seen the waters around the Arctic getting warmer and warmer and warmer. He said to me, Lewis, he said, you have this one opportunity now to share this message with the world. He said, I urge you, please, to find that courage deep down inside you tonight to dive in and to go for it. Later that evening, and then he left me in the cabin on my own, and I spent the whole day there on my own, lying in my bunk, and whenever these negative thoughts came into my mind, I just tried to get them out, but I could never quite get that bad wolf out of my head. Eventually, early in the evening, my doctor comes to my cabin and he says, Lewis, I want you to take you up onto the upper deck of the ship. This is actually the photograph which was taken. He said, I want you to have a look at the swim site. Anyway, so we looked out across this icy terrain, but everywhere there was these enormous open patches of sea. This was 2007. What we witnessed there was the first time in human history that the North Pole had unfrozen like that. Anyway, I looked at it, and the doctor looked at me and he said to me, he said, Lewis, I wonder what this place will look like in another 50 years' time. We then went down to my cabin and the doctor puts his chest monitor around my chest. This is going to measure my heart rate and my core body temperature. As he's putting it on, I can feel his hands starting to shake. Now, when one of the world's top expedition doctors' hands start to shake, you think to yourself, are you really sure that you want to do this swim right now? Anyway, I looked at him and I suddenly realized, it wasn't just me who was frightened. And I said to him, Tim, I just want you to know how incredibly grateful I am to you, because there are not many doctors who'd be prepared to come here and assume this type of risk. And always a gentleman, he said to me, he said, Lewis, it's a privilege to be here, but let's just get this damn swim over and done with. So we walk off the ship, we walked down onto the ice, and I made the most stupid mistake. I walked right up to the edge and I looked into the water, and the water was completely black. I've actually never ever seen completely black water before. Take it from me that when you swim across the North Pole, you see your hand move past your goggle, and as you take that full stroke, your hand actually disappears. That's how dark it is. And it was so frightening I had to take a few steps back. David, my coach, is over there. He comes running up to me. Underneath his arms, he's got 10 flagpoles, and on the end of the flagpoles are obviously flags. They're 10 national flags. And he said to me, he said, have you looked into the water? And I said, yes, I've looked into the water. Yeah, I said, I've never seen anything like this before. He said, Lewis, I want to change the plan. Now, I'm not the type of person that trains literally for 5 years for a swim and then 10 minutes before we're going to get into the water, we're going to change the plan. But he said to me, he said, Lewis, our whole team consists of 29 people. We come from 10 nations. What I decided to do, because all of us couldn't come to the North Pole, was to get all the 10 national flags. And I wanted to put them over there at the North Pole. And then I wanted you to dive in here and swim right the way across the North Pole. Now we thought that this swim, which was 1 kilometre long, would take me round about 20 minutes to complete. Anyway, he looked at the way I was looking at this whole thing and he said, but I'm going to change the plan. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put one of these flags at every 100-metre mark. And all I want you to do is, I'm going to tap you on the shoulder, I want you to dive in, and I just want you to swim 100 metres till you get to that first flag. And when you get there, I just want you to slow down. I want you to take a breath, I want you to look at that flag, and I want you to think about all the men and all the women from that nation who've inspired you so much and helped you so much to be here today. And then I want you to put your head down and do the same thing until you get to the next flag, do the same thing, and so on and so forth until you get to the end. He said to me, it's crushingly obvious that the idea of swimming a full kilometre in this dark black water, it looks impossible, but I know that you can do 100 metres. Well, I thought this was a fantastic idea. It broke this swim down into manageable chunks. It was very, very inclusive. What I hadn't anticipated, though, was what was going to happen next, because suddenly we had this major argument in our team. Which flag's going to go first? Which flag's going to be at the halfway part? Which flag's going to be at the end? And as everybody is arguing this out, I thought to myself, actually, which is the most important flag? And for me, it wouldn't be the first flag, or the halfway mark, or in fact, the end flag, which is so wonderful when you finally get there, or the halfway mark, which is so reassuring, or the beginning when you commit to something. For me, the most important flag would be the flag over there, the flag at the 900-metre mark. And I say this, and I'm as guilty as anyone else, but sometimes in life things get so tough, so arduous, so difficult, that we give up at the 900-metre mark. And when we do that, a number of consequences flow as a result of this simple decision, which have very, very long-lasting implications. The first is, you just want to kick yourself, because you're so close to achieving your dream. The second consequence, though, is that quitting can very, very easily start becoming a habit. And for those of you who perhaps have young children, you'll have seen this happen, that they give up right towards the end. And when you finish something and you complete it, it releases that power and energy because you think, well, if I achieve that, then I can perhaps achieve something a little bit more further down the line. Anyway, so I looked down at all these flags and I thought to myself, which one are we going to put at the 900-metre mark? Well, we were really, really lucky. There was a guy in our team called Jason Roberts. He was an Australian. He was a cameraman on the expedition. Now, I'm half British and I'm half South African. And obviously there's a good rivalry between Britain and Australia. There's an even fiercer rivalry between South Africa and Australia. In fact, there's a fierce rivalry between almost every country and Australia. So I leant down, I picked up the Australian flag, I walked past Jason Roberts, the Australian, I handed the flag to David Becker, my coach, and I said to him, you put the Australian flag at the 900-metre mark because there is no ways on this earth I will ever, ever give up in front of an Australian flag. So once that was all squared away, then David said, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. I just want you to focus your mind, get yourself ready, and then I'm going to tap you on the shoulder. I want you to dive in, and I want you to swim straight to the North Pole. And so we go from 5 minutes to 4 to 3, and I can feel this angst and this fear just building up inside my stomach. Anyway, we just get down to 2, and the fear is very, very real there. You know, the world is divided between pioneers and followers. You're either a pioneer or you're a follower. You can't be both. And if you're a pioneer, you don't know what's going to happen until you dive into the water because nobody else has ever been in there before. So all the risk is on you. It's much easier going second. Much, much easier going second. Anyway, I'm just trying to get these thoughts out of my mind. And then David said to me, okay, Lewis, he said, are you 1 minute, are you ready? And I said, I'm ready. So he said, okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. And as he said 1, this thought came into my mind and I just couldn't dive in. And the thought was, if things go horribly wrong now, how long will it take for my frozen body to sink the 4.5 kilometers all the way to the bottom of the Arctic Ocean, which is just kind of the worst possible thought that you can have when you're just about to attempt to swim across the North Pole. But quite by coincidence, we were doing this swim at 11 p.m. on the 15th of July, which was the exact same time, the exact same day that my father had died a few years previously. I'm thinking about my mother in Cape Town, and I'm thinking, if I kill myself in the next few minutes trying to prove to world leaders what's happening in the Arctic, you shouldn't be able to swim across the Arctic. That Arctic should be frozen over. And if I kill myself in the next few minutes, I leave my mother without her husband and her son. And so I turned to David and I said, David, I said, please, if things go horribly wrong, don't let me do the full kilometer. Pull me out halfway. Anyway, he grabbed me, he pulled me away from the edge of the ice, and he said, Lewis, what are you doing? He said to me, if you dive into this water, preparing to swim a kilometer, but also thinking about getting out halfway, you're going to be confusing the most important part of you, your subconscious, because you're preparing for victory and defeat in your mind at the same time. He said to me, he said, now's the time to believe in yourself, to believe in us as his team, and to carry your message. He said to me, there is nothing more powerful than a made-up mind. And so we walked then back up to the edge of the ice. He gave me a final countdown. He went 3, 2, 1, and I dove straight into the Arctic Ocean. And now I'm going to show you a short film which is going to take you to the North Pole and show you what happened that night. Please play the video.
We're just sailing out of harbour now, and it's at this stage when one can have a bit of a wobble mentally. Everything just looks so grey around here and looks so cold. Just seen our first polar bear. It was absolutely magical. A mother and a cub. Such a beautiful sight. And to think that in 30, 40 years they could become extinct. It's a very frightening, very, very frightening thought. We're finally at the North Pole. This is months and months and months of dreaming to get here, years of training and planning and preparation, and in a couple of hours' time I'm going to get in here and do my swim. It's all a little bit frightening, but and emotional. Emerson, you ready? Ready. Ten seconds to swim. 10 seconds to swim.
You look like you didn't just go. Take your positions.
Well done, lads. You did it, man. You did it, lads. You did it. You did it, man.
That's actually the photograph which we took when we actually arrived at the North Pole. But I think my message is that we've got to get real. We've got to get real. What I mean by that is that we're facing an environmental catastrophe. And I don't use those words lightly, but I'm 53 years old. And in my lifetime, we've lost nearly 70% of the world's wildlife. I mean, think about that for a moment. We've lost nearly 70% of the world's wildlife. And every single year we see more floods, more droughts, more wildfires. And what about ice? Well, you know, I've been swimming in ice now for the past 20 years. When I did my first swim in the high Arctic, so this is north of the island of Spitsbergen, for those of you who know where the top of Norway is, between Norway and the North Pole is an island called Spitsbergen. When I did my first swim there, that's right on the edge of the Arctic ice packs. The water was 3 degrees centigrade. I went back there recently. It's no longer 3 degrees centigrade, it's now 10 degrees centigrade. It had gone from 3 to 10 in just 12 years. And what about ice on land, glaciers? Well, 2 years ago I went to Ilulissat, which is in western Greenland, to do a swim across the face of the Ilulissat glacier. That glacier now is moving at a speed of 40 meters per day in summer. And it's almost as if glaciers now are moving quicker, or the glaciers are now moving quicker than our political leaders. And people ask me, they say, Lewis, what's the greatest threat to the environment? Well, it's really, really simple. It's a belief that somebody else is going to solve this crisis. That some other government is going to cut its emissions, that some other company is going to stop polluting the environment, that somebody's going to come up with a technological solution. I urge you, please, to wake up every single morning, every single person, every single business sector, every single sector of society. I urge everyone to please wake up every single morning and ask themselves a very, very simple question. And that is, what can I do today to help solve the environmental crisis? And then I urge you please to dive in and to commit 100%. Let me end off by just saying this, that every single generation has an opportunity to change the world, to make it safer, to make it more just, and to make it sustainable. And we have got to be that generation. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all very, very much. Thank
you. Yeah, is the microphone picking up from my lapel? Yeah, jolly good. All right, good. And Lewis, you've got a handheld there?
Is this working?
Is that working? Give it a bit of a slap.
Is it working now?
Yeah, if you give it a slap, it always works. Is it working now, everybody? Okay, great. Lewis, tremendous. I watched that film of the North Pole that you showed several times, and I have to say, actually, I feel a little tear coming to my eye, actually. I mean, it's really emotional, isn't it? Yeah. To see you up against this challenge and to feel, in a sense, what you're feeling. We all feel a little bit part of that film, and thus it works very well, because thus maybe we can all feel part of the solution to some of the challenges you're trying to raise. But I wanted to ask you a separate question here, right, which was that, what do you say to people who say, well, I watched the film, it was great, but he only swam 18 minutes, 50 seconds, right? Do some people ever say that to you? Like, well, it was only 18 minutes, 50, I can do that.
They do say that, and more because a lot of people are swimming in cold water now.
Aha.
So water's a fascinating substance, right? So between 0 and 100, it's obviously a liquid. Above 100 it becomes a gas, and below 100, so below 0, it becomes a solid. That's fresh water at sea level, just to give you the thing, right? This water isn't at 0, it's at minus 1.7. But the point I'm trying to make is there's a certain tipping point at which everything changes. The difference between swimming in 0 and swimming in minus 1.7 is the difference between swimming or climbing, let's say, Mount Snowdon and climbing Everest in winter, solo, without oxygen. That every single degree you go down ratchets up that pain and the danger level. And I'd taken a decision the day before that I would do the swim, whatever the outcome. Yeah, because I felt so strongly about it that I had spent 7 summers in the Arctic and I'd seen the place change. And you didn't have to be a scientist to see it.
Yeah.
It was just happening so quickly. And at that time, 2007, there were so many leaders who were denying it. There are no world leaders now who are denying what's happening there. But the situation now is that they're not taking the action necessary to get us out of the predicament.
Yeah. How do you choose these swims? Because this isn't the only swim you've done. We mentioned swimming from the English Channel. You did the full length of the English Channel. You've done other swims. I remember you swam in a glacier in the Himalayas, or in a lake that had been formed by the melting of the glaciers. You did the Red Sea between for the last UN climate conference, COP27, which was held in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. Are you choosing the swims, or do you have a team and you get together and one comes out of a hat, you know, oh, this time we're going to go and do, you know, Blackpool or something, you know. How does it work?
Creativity is a really interesting thing because creativity is never an aha moment. It's an dur moment. And what I mean by that is the great swims are there in front of you, but you don't even realize they're there in front of you until one day you wake up and then you suddenly realize, oh wow, imagine if I swam across the North Pole. What a message that would do. And I've been swimming in the Arctic for many, many years. And I've never thought about the North Pole. And then I opened up a Times Atlas and I wrote down every single place where I could do a swim. And still I didn't see it. And then one day I was in the high Arctic and I just looked north. And it was like, how could I not see this? So what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a place. I want to link my swim with a place which is really well known. So for example, I did the swim in North Pole, English Channel. I did the swim in a lake on Mount Everest. Everyone knows it, so I don't have to explain to people where it is. Number one. Number two, it's got to be a first, right? Because otherwise you're not going to get media attention. But the most important thing, are you going to be able to shine a light on something which can hopefully shift public opinion on what's happening?
Let me turn to the audience. Has anybody got a question for Lewis? Anybody here? Yes, this gentleman here, and then this lady here. Do we have a handheld microphone? We have a handheld microphone. It's making its way down now. I can see it through the gloom. This looks like the Arctic where you swam, right? It's so dark in here right now. Okay, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So my question relates to the color of the water. Because we noticed that when you were swimming, the water was almost black. But when you came out, the water was almost white. Any reason for that? Any explanation for that?
Yes. So when we were looking for a place to get in, there was a little place where there was a little sort of ledge. So I was able to get into the water nice and easily because that ice was around about sort of 5 or 6 meters deep. So getting in and out when you're really cold is quite difficult. So the only reason why you can see it at the end being white is because you're seeing a little piece of ice underneath you. But when you're actually doing the swim, the water is completely black. And what that film doesn't show you, so this swim is done at 90 degrees north. The nearest piece of land is the top of Greenland, 1,000 kilometers away. Okay, there are very few animals up there. Occasionally you see some polar bears, but very few. And in the middle of the swim, out of nowhere, a little seal just popped up, just looked at me, and then just disappeared.
thought you were not dinner for her.
Yeah.
And I sometimes think, I wonder what that seal thought.
Yeah, right.
He thought you're not good for dinner.
He wasn't whispering to you, you better do this, Lewis. You know? Okay.
For us.
Amazing.
Said for us.
For us, yeah. Pass the microphone down here. This lady would like to ask a question, and then maybe there's a couple of hands going up there. Any hands going up towards the back? There's one going up there. Yeah, okay.
I mean, seeing the film, one got goosebumps. But this, by the looks of it, is the most difficult swim you've had. But do you think there is a challenge ahead of you? Which would that be? Where would that be?
Yeah, so people always ask me which was the most difficult swim you've ever done, and in terms of physical pain, or I mean, most difficult you can look at in a number of different ways. Like geopolitically, the most difficult swim I've ever done was swimming across the Red Sea. So I had to swim from Saudi Arabia to Egypt. Okay. Now both those societies, are there any Egyptians or Saudis here? No. I'm not going to say anything that I haven't said in Egypt or in Saudi Arabia. They're very pharaonic societies, and what I mean by that is there's a pharaoh at the top, and every decision has to go all the way from the bottom up to the pharaoh and then come down, so it's really difficult to get decisions. So trying to persuade, for example, a country like Saudi Arabia to allow an environmental activist to swim, okay, across the Red Sea, and trying to persuade Egypt as well. Tragically, a few months before I did the swim across the Red Sea, 2 German ladies were eaten by sharks at the place where I was going to finish. And that just sent their health and safety they didn't want it. And they didn't want it because, you know, I was doing the swim just before the big climate change conference, but it wouldn't have been good publicity for them if another person had been killed. Okay, because their tourism industry is obviously very important for them. So geopolitically, the most difficult swim by far was the Red Sea. The most dangerous swim I've ever done, though, and danger is also a very difficult thing to deal with, because how do you assess some of these risks? I went down to Antarctica about 5 years ago, and I wanted to show how there was melting on the top of Antarctica. So there are big lakes appearing on the surface of Antarctica now. We call these supraglacial lakes. And then these lakes, the water goes down cracks in the ice, and then it goes all the way down, and then all the way down to the bottom. And sometimes you get little rivers appearing underneath this ice. Anyway, when it gets down to the bottom, it lubricates the ground rock, and that makes the whole ice sheet unstable. So I went there, and I found a tunnel which was going down underneath the ice. And we could see that it could come out the other end, about 1 kilometer away. But what can happen is you can get a spontaneous hole that can appear, and it can just suck you straight the way down to the bottom, and that's a kilometer or so straight the way down to the bottom. So this is a kind of high consequence environment. But I looked at it and I felt to myself, what's a better way of showing the world that this place is melting than by actually swimming underneath the ice? So these tunnels are dark and black. And I remember standing at the edge of the tunnel about to go into it. And we thought that this swim would take me around about 15 minutes with the flow of the water. And then I realized, Lewis, just go for it. Just stop thinking, just go for it. Anyway, I got a friend of mine to go to the other end. The whole team, I told them, go to the other end, I'll see you on the other side. And I went down into this tunnel. And the colour of light coming through the ice was unbelievable. And I'm going down this tunnel, so there's a little bit of air on the top. And as I'm going, it goes from this beautiful light blue to a dark blue to a violet to an indigo. And then suddenly, as I came around the corner, it was completely black. I could see nothing. I had to take the goggles off my face. And I then decided, I don't know if I ever told you this, Nick, I decided to actually then start swimming slowly, because I thought to myself, Lewis, nobody's ever been down this tunnel before, and nobody's coming down this tunnel again. This is just try and enjoy this. Anyway, I took the goggles off, and then I heard this most almighty crack as the ice above me was moving. And I got the most terrible fright. I thought the whole thing was going to come down on my head. Anyway, I swam and I swam and swam, and I got out the other end, and I could see the palpable relief. So, your question, which has been the most difficult, I think that one, just because of the risks involved. But I honestly believe, and you know, I'm 53 years old now, I believe that some of my best swims still lie ahead of me. I've swum for 36 years, I want to swim for another 36 years.
Wow, all the best.
A lot of hands going up. I saw a young lady at the back there. Could you, can we get the handheld microphone up to the back there? The young lady in the middle with the glasses on. Yes, you, madam. You, madam. Thank you.
Thank you. So you've got 36 years left of swimming. Where do you see yourself swimming next?
The next.
So I went to go do a recce for this this swim this time last year, and it's simply the most unbelievable place you could ever go in the whole world. And it's a river, and I went to the source of this river, and I got into the river, and I've never seen anything like it, because on either side of me was this thick, dense vegetation, and there were turkey vultures and bald-headed eagles flying over me. And as I was swimming, this beaver came out of the woods, and she came towards me literally like a crocodile. And I just tried to get away from her. Anyway, along the side of the river there were bears. I've never seen anything quite as beautiful and as pristine as this river. And then this river flows for an awful long way until finally it arrives in one of the greatest cities on this earth.
Okay, so we all have to guess a little bit on that one, because you're not giving the whole story away, but it was a good try anyway by the young lady at the back there. So there was a whole raft of hands down this side.
Sorry, that's right.
Oh, I don't know how to handle this now, because it's all getting a bit popular, but you're at the front. We'll be back down this end. The gentleman right at the back with the beard, and then we'll work our way down there. I see Lord St. John's got his hand up as well.
But can I just finish that question about the reason? Our rivers are utterly filthy. I mean, utterly filthy. I live next to a river here in the United Kingdom, down in the Tamar River. And if you start seeing what people are pouring into our rivers, you know, our rivers should be clean, they should be fresh, they should be drinkable, swimmable, fishable, and they're nothing of the sort. And the utter contempt which this government and many governments around the world deal with our rivers. It's as if water isn't precious. So I want to do a swim, and this is the one river in the whole world where I can tell a story about all rivers.
Yeah, but you can't have the answer to what it's called. But you might be able to guess. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, just amazing speech and very, very compelling storytelling. And then the film came on, which is another kind of medium of storytelling. I'm just wondering how important film is to you in all your adventures and endeavours to kind of get the message across to a bit bigger audience.
Yeah. You see, I think people consume things in different ways. Right? So some people love listening to stories, and other people, you know, love a single photograph. We took one photograph of me diving into the North Pole, and it was a sort of like the photographer, Jason Roberts, he put a fisheye lens onto the camera. And so it's an extraordinary picture of me sort of curved, diving in, and then the earth looks like a curvature to indicate that this was at the North Pole. And other people love consuming or looking at films. They don't like to listen to a long story, they just don't have time for an 18-minute TED talk, for example. But the most precious, I think, is film. If you can get it right, it's just the way you can get to so many different people. And it's interesting that people look at that film and they're moved in different ways. So just depending on where they are in their life on that specific day. And the film, it's quite a long one, 7 minutes. But it gives you time to ruminate and to start thinking about the environment and what perhaps you're doing, perhaps what you're not doing on it. So, yeah, film.
There is a longer version of that film, though, isn't there? I think I've seen a longer cut as well.
Well, there's an 18-minute, 50-second one.
Yeah, exactly, right. Okay, working our way down. The gentleman there with the hand up now. No, not you, sir, but the one with the hand up. Now hands are flashing up and down. Nobody knows who I'm talking to.
Two little questions. First of all, when you're doing that swim, obviously your body temperature is going down. What's going through your head?
Yeah.
And the second question, which is the most important, when you come out of the water and you get into the boat, why do they only give you a bloody towel?
Yeah, rather a crate of scotch, Lewis.
Yes. Okay, so the first question is what I'm thinking about. So I really tried to be absolutely rigorous about what David was telling me, because I knew that if I wasn't rigorous, you'll be out that water really, really quickly, because it's just such a terrifying place. And because nobody's ever swum in there before, you don't know what's happening. And I could start feeling my heart sort of racing at times. And what starts happening is your tongue starts freezing. Right, so your tongue starts becoming like a lollipop. And as a result of that, it becomes really difficult to expel water. And so you're trying to breathe out, but your lips are freezing, your tongue is freezing, and so you're swallowing quite a bit of water. And you just don't know where the edge is. So the only way the only way that I could get that thought out of my mind was by being absolutely rigorous and thinking about the next flag. So I'd be counting strokes until I got to the next flag. And then sometimes you're just so cold, it's so painful, you start thinking about it, and then you've got to quickly be more disciplined and start thinking about the next flag. It was only until I got to the Australian flag that I realised I'm going to make this swim. Up till then, I was just trying to get to the next flag. On the second question, which is, come on, Lewis, that little small tower. What's happening there? Well, the only way to get to the North Pole in summer is on a Russian ship. It's a Russian icebreaker. My whole team I think there were 7 of us who actually went to the North Pole. We, Investec put down some money, Speedo put down some money, but we were still quite a bit short. And so I put down all my savings, absolutely everything. And we got to the airport and we were over, we had too much weight. and so I said, the lady said, you're overweight, it was going to cost a couple of £100. I just didn't have the money. So I said, please, I'm going to the North Pole to attempt this swim, please. And she said, it'll be £300. So I said to everybody, please take out everything which is not essential. So I went into my bag and I had 2 towels. I thought, this is a ship, there are going to be towels on the ship, right? It's a fair assumption to make. Not on a Russian ship. That was the biggest towel that they had on that Russian ship. And so when I got out the water, they passed it to me. It did feel like a little chilly. Yeah.
Okay, that's a fantastic story. Right, there's the gentleman there, yes. Yeah, we're working our way down.
Hi. My question is, would you ever go swimming with sharks to create awareness on the current states of shark endangerment in the oceans?
Let me tell you a quick story about sharks. So obviously I just told you that when I was going to swim across the Red Sea, one of the issues was that there's a real risk. So 2 German women were killed about 3 months before I was going to swim across the Red Sea. So there's a South African photographer called Steve Benjamin. Steve Benjamin is one of the world's top National Geographic photographers. He goes to South Africa and he films inside bait balls. So these are big balls of sardines going along the South African coast. He goes right into the middle of them with his camera, and great white sharks come up and he's literally right in front of them taking photographs. So I thought, this is the right guy for me. So the 2 of us went to the Red Sea to do a recce, and we spent 3 days there looking in the water and swimming around. And I mean, for those of you who've been to the Red Sea, you know how utterly amazing it is. I mean, the corals are so rich and so colourful, and the fish, but they're also sharks. And the sharks, the type of shark that killed these ladies was an oceanic white tip. And at the end of the 3 days, he said to me, I feel confident that we could do this safely. He said, but we're going to have to deal with oceanic white tips. And he said, oceanic white tips are very, very different to great white sharks. A great white shark will come up from the bottom like a torpedo and it'll grab you. He said, an oceanic white tip is not like that, Lewis. It'll come along the surface of the water slowly and just try and take chunks out of you. So he said, these are the rules, you must obey them. Number 1, don't try and outswim an oceanic white tip, it's not going to work. He said, number 2, as that thing comes towards you, what you need to do is, it's a predator, you need to face it and you need to start swimming towards it. So he said, number 3, as it opens its mouth to try to take a chunk out of you, what I want you to do, Lewis, is I want you to take your hand and I want you to gently put your hand on its nose and then just slowly push it down and away from you. And then he says, and then it'll swim around and then it'll try it again, and you just do that again, and then it'll do it a few times and it'll get bored and then you carry on with your swim. And he said, the fourth rule, just remember this one. Your goggles magnify, so don't accidentally put your hand in its mouth. We're on day 3 of the swim. We've got a small little boat next to us, with a small little, even smaller ladder. 3 of us in the water, myself, a photographer, and an Egyptian swimmer. And suddenly we hear, shark, shark. And I put my head up, and it was exactly as he was saying. This thing was coming towards us slowly, and its fin was about this much out the water. And as it was coming towards us, it was like Darwin. It was honestly like Darwin. 3 men, all of us, instantaneously, trying to get up that ladder as quickly as possible. Okay? Anyway, it happened a second time, and again, I tried to swim towards it. Up the ladder. Yeah? I love sharks. Okay? And sharks are so precious for our marine environment. Millions and millions are slaughtered every single year. The greatest threat to the environment is that we slaughter all these sharks. They're essential for a healthy environment. But as a swimmer, I try to keep away from them.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think everyone's kind of on your side with that one. Absolutely critical that we stop slaughtering in the numbers that we have been doing. Yes, gentleman here. Yep, that's you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Nick. If we can go back to the ramifications of global warming, if the world heats up by more than 2 degrees centigrade, what will the ramifications be?
Good. So let me just stick to oceans, because oceans are what I know. Coral reefs. So coral reefs are the nurseries of our oceans. Okay? At least a quarter of life in our oceans is in coral reefs. They're absolutely essential. And as I say, you go to these coral reefs and they're absolute natural wonder of this earth. Okay? And the coral reefs in the Red Sea are some of the most resilient. But what the scientists are telling us is if we heat the planet by 1.5 degrees, then 70% of the world's coral reefs will die. If we heat the planet by 2 degrees, 99% of them die. And we're currently on track for 2.7 degrees. Let me just run you through those again, because it's like number soup sometimes. At the moment, we've heated the planet by about 1.3 degrees centigrade. At 1.5, which scientists are estimating will hit within 10 years, at 1.5 we lose 70% of the world's coral reefs. At 2 degrees, we lose 99%. We're currently on track for 2.7 degrees. It's catastrophic for the oceans.
Yeah.
And actually, can I just, in fact, that links into your question, and we didn't talk about it before, and I've never asked you that question, Lewis. Do you think you have actually moved the needle in terms of have the politicians paid attention to your films, your attempts to bring the attention to these things? And then secondly as well, what in your opinion is a good measure that we could take that is still possible to make a difference? I've heard about cloud whitening and all these things. Is there anything you think is the best?
So let me go and ask whether any of the swims have actually made a difference. So you'll have heard of marine protected areas. These are like national parks in the sea. Right? One of the things I felt really, really passionate about was trying to create marine protected areas around the waters in the United Kingdom. I grew up in Plymouth. Right? And a few years ago, I decided to do a swim along the length of the English Channel. So from Land's End all the way to Dover. So about 2,000 people have swum across the English Channel, but nobody had swum the length of the English Channel. The width of the English Channel is 32 kilometers, but nobody had swum the length, which is 528 kilometers. So I went to go meet a man called John Riley. And John Riley, and it relates to the question about films. John Riley is the CEO of Sky News. I said to him, John, I want to swim the full length of the English Channel. I said, would you please give me some coverage? And he said to me, well, how long is it going to take? And I said, well, I reckon about 50 days. So, swimming can be quite a boring sport, right? So, you've got your head in the water, you can't talk while you're swimming. And so everybody had said to me, no, we won't give you any coverage at all. John took a completely different position. He said, I tell you what, Lewis, I'm going to give you daily coverage. And he said, what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to use you as a thread to tell a story about what is happening in British waters. And so each day, I'll go off and interview somebody else, and then I'll come back to you who's swimming along the river, along the English Channel. So he said, I'll interview a Royal Navy captain, I'll interview a fisherman, I'll interview an energy provider, I'll interview a minister, I'll interview people, ordinary members of the public, somebody cleaning the beach with plastic pollution, I'll interview them all the way along. 50 days, no problem. And so they created this thing called Sky Ocean Rescue, and then I went down to the start of the English Channel and I started to swim. Well, the first week was absolutely gorgeous. It was Cornwall, flat, nice and warm. By the end of the second week I got to Plymouth. Homecoming was amazing. I then had to swim 120 kilometers across Lyme Bay. And it was completely full of jellyfish. And jellyfish are the most unforgiving animals. They always smack you straight in the face, or sometimes they get between your groin. And as you're moving your legs, then you've got jellyfish between your legs. Anyway, eventually I got to the halfway mark. And then, we had storm after storm after storm. Finally, I got to the end. And there to meet me at the end was Michael Gove, who was the Environment Secretary. And he said to me, Lewis, we've heard you. I said to him, Michael, I wish you'd heard. So the whole swim took me 49 days. I said, Michael, I wish you'd heard me before I had to swim for 49 days. Anyway, he said, what do you need? I said, Michael, the science is really, really clear. The science is that if we're not protecting at least 30% of the world's oceans now, by 2030, there is no chance of them recovering. 30% by 2030. And so we started this thing called 30 by 30. Anyway, a month later, the United Kingdom government agreed to this. Lord Goldsmith then went to the United Nations. They made that pledge at the United Nations. They were the first major economy to do it. And Britain then said, please, would other countries join us? Well, and then they got every single ambassador, every single high commissioner around the world pumping this, asking all the environment ministers in the 196 nations. Since then, 126 nations have made that commitment. Now that's fantastic, right? Because you need a commitment. But commitments are only commitments. We need action. And action means you start creating a marine protected area, and a marine protected area means it's protected, right? And yes, some of the countries are doing really well on this journey now. The United States of America, for example, is doing a fantastic job. For other countries, South Africa, Russia, China, Brazil, those BRICS economies are not doing well in this journey, and they've got an awful long way to catch up. You asked me your second part. So yes, so are people hearing me? Well, sometimes, but I've done many swims and people haven't heard me.
I think the interesting thing that you're raising there is, and it comes back a little bit to some of the questions around here, is that sometimes people don't know how well humanity is doing in some areas to actually deal with climate change. I mean, we look at renewable energy, it's doubling every 2.5, 3 years, it's gone exponential, like the transistors in the computing system, right? So that part of the story of the Paris Climate Change Agreement is probably going to be delivered, i.e. the energy story. But it's only where people can clearly make money that things are going fast. The electrification of the cars, for example, and the transportation system. Where it's harder to imagine making money, or it's proving difficult, like the forests. I mean, people are trying carbon markets and they're trying all these kind of other things, but then there's some corruption here, or there's some fiddling going on there, and everyone says, no, it doesn't work. Land is really tricky too, and the natural environment, in other words, the marine environment too, where people can't clearly see how to make, a penny, a shilling, or a dollar on it. These are where we are so far behind on the story, as opposed to the areas where people can actually see a kind of capitalist solution. Yeah.
And especially the case when you've got oceans,
yeah.
Because you go down to the beach on a summer's day and you look out to sea and the sun is going down and you think, oh, this is beautiful. But I want world leaders. I want to take world leaders and I want to put their heads under the water. And this is why I did the swim across to Sharm el-Sheikh, across the Red Sea. I want world leaders to put their heads under the water, because only when you put your heads under the water that you begin to realize, wow, this is an amazing place. We need to protect it with absolutely everything.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Just, gentleman here, this gentleman here has been really, really asking for a long time, and he's going to come up here and do something a little bit worse than you might have done to that shark, if I don't give him the microphone.
Thank you very much. My comment is and question for both of you, actually, because the media, as Lewis has said, is very powerful too. If Sky TV had not agreed, Michael Gove have never been met you after 49 days. So I think it is very important that you are working together, and I'm very pleased. I'm a political activist. I work for peace and justice. I think you use the same word. But I think in the third world countries, particularly, and as you said, BRICS, it is very important. You have reached already over 36 years to almost 120 countries' heads who have committed, and now some are taking action. But in third world countries, where the wars are going on, there is no tolerance, there is no peace. How can you reach, apart from other ways than the media? I think that is my question, but I think your work is fascinating. I'm very pleased that I'm here, and I have heard you, but I will do whatever is needed in my capacity to work with you, because the biggest challenge is the environment, not the wars.
Thank you so much. You know, articulating the link between environmental damage and conflict, I don't think has been properly done. When we damage the environment, we create conditions which are ripe for conflict. And conversely, when we protect the environment, we foster peace. And peace is a beautiful thing. When you grow up in a country like I did, where there was real conflict, right? When you see and you witness peace, it's a beautiful thing. And it's something we should be striving for. And it's not something that is a one-off moment. You've got to strive for it every single day. And it's what I'm saying to people, that every single day you've got to ask yourself, what can I do today to help protect the environment? And then you've got to dive in and commit. It was very, very interesting. When I did the swim along the English Channel, I made 3 promises at the beginning to my team. I said, the first promise I make you is I'm going to leave all my doubt at the beginning. The second promise I'm going to make you is that every single day I'm going to swim 10 kilometers. And I said, the third promise I'm going to make you is if we can't go out on a specific day because it's just too dangerous, because the boat can't even get out, I said the next day I'll swim 20 kilometers. And then I started swimming. And until the halfway mark, we were able to do 10 kilometers a day, until we got to Portsmouth. And then it was storm after storm after storm. And there were days when we just couldn't swim, and so we sat in harbour, and then the following day I'd wake up and I'd do a double shift, 20 kilometers. And then wake up the next morning and do another 10 kilometers, so 30 kilometers in a very, very short period of time, which is equivalent to doing English Channel. We're just repeating it. The reason why I'm telling you this story is, at any given time, there are crises happening around the world. We've got the dreadful, horrific war happening in Ukraine. We've got what's happening in Yemen. We've got what's happening in Sudan. Let's even forgetting about the cost of living crisis in the United Kingdom. At any given time, there are so many crises. And there are going to be times when world leaders simply cannot deal on that specific day with another environmental issue. The following day, they need to do a double shift, because the environment is not going to wait for them. And the numbers are moving away from us. And people ask me, do you have hope? And as I say, hope is a dangerous word, because hope can lead to an abdication of responsibility. We need to earn hope, and we earn hope by taking action every single day.
Right, we are so fast running out of time, but no. There was a man with a beard back there. He deserves a look in, just behind. We haven't completely run out of time. Be calm. We'll get as many as we can. Yeah.
Hi, Lewis. Fantastic to listen to you talk. I missed your presentation. Sorry about that. I'm almost 60. I've started doing swimming as a serious sport for the last 3 years, and I've been doing 1.5 kilometers twice a week. And I know how difficult a sport it is. I wish more people could be encouraged to swim. I'm enjoying it tremendously. With the aim of doing the 60+ Olympics in the next couple of years. So I've got an ex-Olympic champion training me at the moment. What could you do to encourage more people to swim? Because people don't realize how good a sport it is.
I think swimming, thank you so much. I think swimming is the best sport on the planet, and I think it for 2 reasons. It's the only sport in the whole world where you're operating on 3 axes. Think about it. So your arms are moving around and around, your head's moving left to right, and your legs are moving up and down. So you've got to work out, you've got to get the timing of that right, okay? But you're moving the whole body. The second reason why it's such a great sport is because it's not load-bearing. It's not like running down a road or something like that. And I think the other reason is because you can get out into nature. And this is what we saw during COVID. I mean, swimming, they talk about wild swimming in this country. So open water swimming, as we say in the rest of the world, was quite popular beforehand. But COVID supercharged it. And that was because people went out and they went to the local, because the gyms were closed, the pools were closed, they went to lakes, they went to the rivers, they went to the sea. And there they started speaking with people. And a lot of people enjoyed, going into the water in the cold, and they felt how wonderfully invigorating it was. I think it's amazing to see the numbers of swimmers. In Devon and Cornwall, we have 200,000 members of the Devon and Cornwall Wild Swimming Association. And think about that, it's just 2 counties. Yeah, 200,000. Okay? It's a big group. If there are any swimmers listening, I believe anybody who's using the sea, whether you're a swimmer, a surfer, a kayaker, a sailor, a fisherman, we have a duty and a responsibility to also not only enjoy it, but also to protect it. And for too long, we haven't spoken up. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the exciting thing, to mobilize all the swimmers and the surfers, and then we become a big voice.
Yeah, there's that great NGO, Surfers Against Sewage.
They're amazing.
Which, there's something to think about. Right, okay, let's have a lady on the front here. I'm now looking at the time here. Oh my God. All right, quick question, quick answer, and one more quick question and a quick answer. And then I think we have to wrap up.
Quick, thank you. Thank you so much, Lewis. I'm not very knowledgeable about the ocean, but what really strikes me, and I would love to have your honest answer today, to the question, what is the most destructive human intervention with regards to utilizing and using the sea? So if we're looking at swimming, very low impact.
Yes.
Surfing, perhaps a little bit more because of microplastics, might be in a non-wooden, surfboard might, get into the ocean. Yeah. Up to submarines, tankers, massive cruise ships. What's the one thing we should stop straight away?
So the most damaging thing to the environment, it depends where you are in the world, but it's industrial fishing. Yeah, they're literally coming along and hoovering up the last fish, and some of these industrial fishing fleets are dragging their nets over, precious coral. Okay, it's absolutely destructive.
How can I stop participating in that as a consumer? How can I identify what is industrial fishing?
So we can't get your question now because on the recording, because we haven't got the microphone there. Just quickly, what can we do is just ask the question again.
So what can I do as a consumer to make sure that I change my behavior to not support that industrial fishing? How can I figure out if I buy fish, if it's industrially fished or not?
So if you want to stop industrial fishing, you stop eating fish.
Yeah. Or, if you're very lucky, you may be living in a country that has an app which can actually tell you exactly where those fish came from on the menu at the restaurant, whether they've been line fished or whether they've been hoovered up. Actually, they shouldn't even have them on the menu if they've done that. So there are a few little, Marine Stewardship Council maybe as well. That's not bad. But you're right, I think maybe give the fish a break. Yeah? Okay, flip. Last question here. Sorry, I'm really sorry. What can I do? There are other people that have to speak.
I'll be upstairs afterwards.
He's going to be upstairs afterwards, yeah.
My question is very simple. How did you prepare yourself for that swim?
You can prepare yourself physically, and as I say, it was 5 years of preparation. But the final preparation was, could I believe that I could swim in water which was minus 1.7? So we built a special swimming pool, and we took it from 14 degrees, and every single day we put ice in there. And we tied me up against a wall, and I swam in a static position. And so every day I swam for 1 kilometer, which we set it at 20 minutes, and every day we lowered it by 1 degree by putting more ice in it, until we got down to 5 degrees, and something happens at 5 degrees. It is just so cold, and then 4 it gets colder, and then we got down to 1. To get to 0, you need to add salt into it. To get down to minus 1.7, you can't really do it in these conditions. But we got down to 0. It was incredibly painful, but I thought, what's the difference in 0 and minus 1.7? I can do it. But by getting down to zero, I believed deep down that I could do this swim. And so it was in that process of slowly adapting each day that I could do it.
So how long altogether the process?
So the 5 years in total, but for that final acclimatization to get down to 1 degree was about 15 days.
Thank you.
Along that happy note, we have to end it there. Lewis, give this guy a big hand. Great work. Thank you.
Well, it just leaves me to give the vote of thanks. Can you hear me? What an awe-inspiring, inspirational talk by Lewis, my dear friend Lewis, and also well moderated by Nick. It's, I have to say, this is the most extraordinary times. COP27 was an unmitigated disaster. We were hoping for mitigation. Instead, all we had was adaptation. But we had some incredible messages from Lewis in his talk. His good wolf, bad wolf, the fact that we've lost 70% of the world's wildlife. And I love the comment that glaciers are moving quicker than our political leaders. I say that as someone who is a crossbencher in the House of Lords. By the way, I'm there by fluke of sperm, and I don't deserve to be in the House of Lords. But at a time when the world is so deeply divided in politics, where we have so many tensions between East and West, at a time when we have this terrible war going on in Ukraine, as well as in Sudan, never has there been more of a time for us to unite. And I thought the words that Lewis used, we need action, not just commitments. But we need to unite, and Nick spoke very movingly about Lewis's iconic achievements. We know so many of them, which are incredibly brave. And interesting, we would have all thought when he started that talk that crossing the Arctic would have been the most dangerous, but it was the Red Sea which was the most dangerous of the lot. I'm petrified of sharks, by the way. I also thought it was great logic choosing the Aussies at the 900-meter mark. But really, Lewis, thanks so much, and also thanks to Nick for moderating so well. We could have carried on for another hour with those Q&A, and it came to you from Berlin today. So I was given just 3 minutes, which is mission impossible, but I'll try and keep to near as that as possible. So if it wasn't for 2 individuals that are here today, the Global Sustainability Film Awards would not be continuing. And I want to thank Serena and Mason for their incredible work, their dedication, their commitment. They just weren't prepared to give up. And there were some very dark times. I was a trustee of TV way back 25 years ago, when I worked very closely with Robert Lamb, the late Robert Lamb. He was the most amazing man of huge passion. And he firmly believed in the risks the world faced about the increase in degrees centigrade. If he were here today, those frightening statistics that Lewis gave us earlier on, he would be nodding his head and said, I told you so. But the whole message, the whole point of the Film Awards and the whole point of our TVE is to spread the word. And there's a very good question from the back earlier on about, so how effective are films in changing the minds of people? And I think the world today, it's the young minds that need to be changed. You know, you have some parts of the world like Nigeria, where over 50% of the 268 million people who live in the country are under the age of 18. And film is the one way which young minds can be changed. And it's not just changing minds, it's changing behaviors. And I thought your question earlier on about how can you change your behavior, I wouldn't recommend giving up fish, by the way. It's very healthy. You know, we do need to be looking at more sustainable ways. But really, I just want, on behalf of all of us, to thank Mason and Serena for their incredible work. And thank you, thank you, thank you. I also want to thank Azad, who spoke earlier on very movingly. He helped sponsor today, and he's also been a major sponsor of the GFSA. It's also great to see my friend Dinesh, who seems to have disappeared. He was here earlier on. I know Dinesh from playing golf, so we'll have to play a bit of golf together when we have the TVE awards, the TVE golfing day. But there is a bit of good news. My wife, gorgeous Serena, wherever she is, there she is standing up there. I'm so lucky to have a lovely wife like Sabina. But she mentioned about some of the remediation. I don't know whether you know this, but Sir David King, who was the Chief Scientific Officer for Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, David Cameron, Theresa May, he has set up an institute in Cambridge called the Centre for Climate Repair. And there are some incredible technologies out there, such as white cloud, getting more plankton in the ocean. So there's the technology is there. We just need global leaders to wake up, and rather than spending money on greenwashing, spend money on real innovation and technology, because the technology is there to make a change. Otherwise, we'd all be splitting our risks. But I just also wanted to hope that we can get your support for the GSFA, the Film Awards in November. It's an incredibly important occasion. It's incredibly important, not just for the awards, but for everyone else who will be seeing those awards and seeing those films. We're hoping that if you've got any of your friends who might want to enter a film, please do so. So I've really overrun my mark, but I just wanted to again thank Lewis. He actually had to go to the dentist today just before coming here. So it's amazing that we got him here, because I had to touch and go whether he was going to get here on time. But such moving words. And I finish from where I started. We need action, not just commitments. Thanks very much for
Prince start.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, so there will be a drinks reception in the private dining room, and you head in that direction.
Can I just say one word, if I may? Serena Bray mentioned that we started TV 39 years ago, and I was the founder of TV, and that was when I was 40. So I wanted to just say it's a privilege to be here. Thank you so much for coming. And frankly, this is the film we saw, the stories we've been told are why I founded it. So thank you so very much indeed.